Hi there, Malcolm here with my 404th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you a book review for He Who Fights with Monsters by Shirtaloon, also known as Travis Deverill, and I listened to this on Audible and it was read to me by Heath Miller, who I thought did a bang up job. Now first off, this is quite an important book to me because it is the 2000th book I've put on my books read list. So really excited about that milestone, so I'm going to do a separate video on I've read 2000 books, so look out for that one. And the other thing to note is I've come off to this one after having just listened to the first 5 books of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series read by the amazing Jeff Hayes, and although Heath Miller did a bang up job, when I moved from the sound booth theatre production to a normal production, I felt I was missing something. There was a huge drop in my engagement with the book because it wasn't Jeff Hayes, it was an amazing performance. I had Heath Miller's rather good performance. I'm not saying he didn't do a good one, but there's levels and then there's levels. So I struggled to get into this one a bit because it wasn't the dynamic, amazing experience that the Dungeon Crawler Carl series is. Right, with that out of the way, He Who Fights with Monsters. This is another LitRPG story, or first of a series of books, that follows a guy called Jason who goes to bed one morning and then wakes up stark naked and hairless in the middle of a hedge maze on another world. And for reasons that aren't really explained until way into the story, he has an inventory, he has a world map he can access just by thinking about it. So he basically finds himself as the main character in a role-play game scenario thing, except he's actually in a different world for reasons. And we follow Jason as he haplessly fights savage hedgehogs and so on and so forth, as he stumbles his way through this maze, and of course one thing leads to another, and he's getting sacrificed by a cult of cannibals, and ends up rescuing a whole bunch of adventurers, and they train him up in the ways of the world. Rough summary of the beginning. This is quite a lengthy story, at 28 hours long, which I did find get bogged down on quite a few occasions with a lot of exposition. Jason asking other characters, what's this, what does that mean, what does this do? So we have lots of Q&A sessions as he's learning about the world, as you're learning about the world through him. But okay, they may be walking and talking or sitting and having a drink, but rather than the gradual discovery of things, we have a bit of that, and then info dump, another thing happened, info dump, another thing happened, info dump. And sometimes I did find the expositions a bit grating. I wanted to find out what was happening next. Particularly as it took a long time to get to the answers to how he came to be there in the first place. Why was he naked? Why was he hairless? Why is he no longer counted as being a human but an outworlder? And my issue with this one was, I think this probably works better as a text to read novel as opposed to one to listen to, because there are regular returns to his character sheet or to a status or even quests, which are read out things like, quest 1 of 1, you must defeat the moss troll, 0 or 1 complete. And a lot of that sort of nonsense, which when it was repeated to you over and over again, there's one scene where he's got to fight a whole bunch of rats, and something else is killing the rats, and so every now and again a rat would be killed elsewhere, and it goes, quest, kill all the rats, 3 of 17. Quest, kill all the rats, 3 of 16. Quest, kill all the rats, 3 of 15. And I imagine on the page they're in boxes or in a certain bold font and laid out in a particular way. And at a glance, you could flip down that list very quickly and just see that the numbers are diminishing and that's about it. Or a table of stats, you could quickly peruse the sheet, pick out the pertinent information, and particularly at the beginning everything is 0 of 0%. You can see where it's increased since the last time you've seen it. Having to listen to all this read out was like listening to very technical jargon just being read out in a slightly interesting way. And like I say, the narrator did a good job how he read it. It was just the fact that listening to unnecessary information being read out repeatedly was a bit of a downer. But that being said, I enjoyed the character of Jason immensely, and the other characters he meets are also very interesting characters. The plot doesn't really start plotting until right near the end, I think about the 26-hour mark, where all his friends, everybody knows, pretty much abandoned them to go off on a quest to go and investigate something, and he's left to just sort out some things on his own, which was an interesting enough thing in itself, because there was another sort of subplot going on in the background which had no bearing on anything else for a lot of it. You know, we'd have Jason, and then these people. Jason, these people. You know, what the hell have they got to do with anything? And then finally the two do start interacting, and then we get a bit of that going on. But no, the main plot looks like there's some weird invasion by some things for some reason, and this expedition that goes off to investigate gets attacked by it, and that leads up to the end of the book. So it's like, it's just getting going, and right, on to book 2. So no, I'm back to Dungeon Crawler Carl, thank you very much. Book 6 of that. However, I am interested enough and invested enough in the story to want to continue it. There's a reasonable amount of humour in here. There are certainly a number of laugh out loud moments, or at least some chuckles. But I would say if you're a bit wary of Dungeon Crawler Carl because of the adult content in it, the language, the innuendos, and the more blatant things, then I would recommend this as a good alternative, because the language and the content doesn't get any worse than what The Simpsons would do. It can border a little bit on risque, it can border a little bit on quite violent and bloody, but I don't think it really crosses any line that I go, oh, that went a bit far. And Jason does develop some rather scary and awful powers, but because he's a reasonably decent guy, they're less disturbing, if that kind of makes sense. I mean, there's this great scene where he's in a holodeck type environment and he's fighting 5 other adventurers as a training exercise. It's him versus the other 5, and he takes on this evil maniacal persona to just mess with their heads completely. It's a very entertaining scene as he completely destroys their morale and competence without even laying a finger on them, and then he attacks. It's a brilliant scene, and I would say this is worth buying. So have you read He Who Fights with Monsters? What did you think about it? How would you compare it to Dungeon Crawler Carl? Or have you ever experienced something of such high production value and then gone on to something that's really well done but doesn't have the flair of which it's moved from, that you think, I want to go back to that again, and not really give the thing that you're now focused on the proper attention because you're too busy missing what you've had? I say, had I read this first and then gone on to Dungeon Crawler Carl, that would have been a nice step up in my LitRPG experience. But having gone from God tier to standard good stuff, it felt like a step down, but at no fault of the author or the narrator. Comment down below, please, but as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it yourself. Thank you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and other YouTube things if you want. Until next time, see you later.